There were serious breaches of international law and crimes against humanity being committed during the two-year Tigray War, according to a report released by the U.S. think tank New Lines Institute. The report said it found reasonable basis that all parties in the conflict committed serious war crimes and breaches of international law. Ethiopia's defense force and allied forces also appeared to have committed crimes against humanity and acts of genocide against Tigrayans as an ethnic group, according to the report. Now, joining me on the program is Tsedale Lemma, founder of the Addis Standard Tri-lingual Publications. And also joining me at some point in the program will be Ezekiel Gebissa. Okay, is joining us, I understand, is here. Ezekiel Gebissa, professor of history and African studies, of course, joining me from Michigan. Thank you for your time and, of course, your patience on the program, gentleman and lady.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Let me start off with you, Tsedale. This report, a revelation by, the Institute, based on many reports. I'd like to know your immediate reactions to some of the issues being raised before we get into specifics.
Thanks for having me. My immediate reaction of that was reliving of the pain all over again. What the New Lines institution did is actually bringing together the events that we watched happening in front of our eyes. What they did is assemble those factors together. So for me, it was about reliving those factors that I have seen happening all over again. That part is a very heartbreaking all over again. But I also felt some kind of relief in a way that even though justice could be far away from where we are now, this is one step ahead for the pursuit of justice for the victims of this genocidal war. What they did is bring in irrefutable evidence together and bring it inescapable for anyone who is willing to watch and to look into what happened for the 2 years. So this could be a very baby step towards the pursuit of justice. So sadness and relief is what I felt all at the same time.
You use the word baby steps. This could be baby steps, of course, in the road to justice. Let me go to Ezekiel. Now, the report actually did highlight instances of genocide and crimes against humanity. Can you, give instances or specific sources that, might be linked to this report and the parties involved?
Well, the parties that are involved are the combatants on both sides, but mostly the genocide and crimes against humanity and other war crimes were committed particularly by the Ethiopian National Defense Force, the Eritrean National Defense Forces, and the Amhara Regional Forces. Those are the ones that are held culpable for the crimes perpetrated against Tigrayans as a whole or in part. What they did basically is bring the law, international humanitarian law, and international criminal law, and any other law that pertains to genocide, crimes against humanity, and call upon states around the world to take appropriate actions. So that is basically the gist of the report that I read.
Let me go to you, Tsedale. Quite a number, still, pretty blurry as regards what could be the root cause of all of this. You have a strong footing when it comes to these issues. You've been at the forefront, been vocal, particularly on this. I would like to know exactly, take us through what exactly you consider the root cause of this recurrent issue.
The root cause is complicated, but it's also very easy. And if you could allow me a few minutes, I can take you back. The root cause is historical, political, and vengeance, all combined together. What we have seen is the forces that Professor Ezekiel raised earlier, Eritrean forces that have crossed over into the sovereign territory of the Ethiopian state and committed these atrocities and genocidal war crime. And the root cause for them is vengeance. because of a conflict that dated back 20 years ago or more, in which they had a territorial claim in the Tigray region, and a war that was fought following that. That was the Ethio-Eritrean War of the 1998 and 2000. And they had a score to settle. And if you take it to the Ethiopian side, the issue is both historical claim, a territorial claim by the Amhara forces in the Tigray region, and also political by the federal government that has fallen out with the TPLF. The TPLF is the party that was the dominant party in the previous regime before the current regime came to power in 2018. So this is a combined effect of historical, territorial claim and vengeance all coming together that has resulted in this genocidal war against the Tigrayan people.
Let me go to you, Ezekiel. Now, the report also talks about a reasonable basis, to believe that such violations amount to commissions of war crimes, and also some of the inhumane things that, in terms of treatment, that has been attributed to this. Now, I mean, this is not the first time this issue has been in the front burner when it comes to conversations and raising awareness, even when the war was on. But it looks like the international system seems to be, for want of words, pretty mute on it. Why do you think that is, compared to how loud the West, for instance, is as regards the war or the crisis in Gaza and what is going on between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I mean, if the international community decides that genocide has been committed, now every country that is a signatory to the Genocide Convention becomes responsible to react to it, to enforce the laws, because it becomes the responsibility of states. Even in this document, what the New Lines Institute is suggesting is that there are individuals that will be criminally prosecuted for perpetrating crimes against humanity or other atrocity crimes in Tigray. But if this has been established by the international community, then it becomes a burden on everybody. But each country has their own interests. They have geopolitical interests. They don't want to take that responsibility. And that's basically what you're seeing, not only in Ethiopia or in Gaza, but in Rohingya and other places where actually there was an intention to exterminate people as a group or as in part, but the international community is not in the place where it was right after World War II, where they said, never again. It only now applies to Israel, that the never again, the Holocaust, that is what makes people react, countries react, but they really don't want to take any responsibility for this, whether this is committed in Darfur or any other places. But in general, if you look at the international politics, there is a recession of democratic peace and democratic transformation. The authoritarians are coming back, and they really don't care about international crime because they are also culpable, and that's the way they rule. Authoritarians are ruled by force, ruled by law, not the rule of law. So they really shy away from acting according to the responsibilities that they bear since when they signed the Geneva Convention or the crimes against humanity or any other law that they are responsible for. So there is a general trend in the world today to retreat from protecting human rights everywhere, and much less in the Horn of Africa, where geopolitical and economic and international diplomatic interests are colliding at various levels, at the global level, at the regional level, and at the local level. So what is taking
do you also think that resource control could do you also think that resource control, of some sort, could be a key player in all of this too, particularly when it comes to the involvement of bigger, systems, talking about the West?
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying, that there is a collision of interests at the global and regional levels, because China on one side, Russia on the other side, and the West on the other side is really vying for supremacy or control in the region, in the Red Sea area and the Gulf of Aden area. And there are also middle-level powers like the UAE and Saudi Arabia on on the other side, but also Egypt and Turkey, all the way to the Mediterranean basin. Economic interest is really trumping any human rights considerations at this moment.
I'd like to know your, of course, take on that also, Tsedale.
I think the professor really outlined it very well. But when it comes to Ethiopia, I would add this as well. The war was waged in the name of liquidating the TPLF. The TPLF is the party that has a leftist ideology, which was in control of the Ethiopian state along with other coalition as a party. And they have resisted for 27 years. They have resisted opening up the Ethiopian state economy to liberalization and privatization. And the West was pushing against that. And when they have finally capitulated and were driven out of power, this was an opportunity for the Western world to push through liberalization and privatization of state-owned enterprises and also the economy at large, such as the biggest ones, Ethiopian Telecom, and even Ethiopian Airlines, which has always been protected under Ethiopian state-owned enterprise. So the West has been pretty much keen in supporting the current regime, the current prime minister, as he embarked on this massive privatization and liberalization of the economy. And the TPLF would have been the one party that would strongly oppose and be on the way against that move. So they have seen that as a necessary evil to get rid of. So when this war was happening, it was happening all in the name of eliminating the TPLF, even as we watched atrocities happening, documented, and we were watching it and the world was watching it. The war has a name, and the name is law enforcement against the TPLF. Just to reinforce my point, only yesterday, and just so we don't talk about this ongoing genocide in the past, only yesterday, a prominent professor who has been at the forefront of supporting this war was in the media saying, and I quote him, saying the importance of eliminating, finishing off the TPLF. The TPLF is a political party that has millions of supporters in the Tigray region, and even if it doesn't, this, advocating for this kind of ideas in the name of liquidating one party is no less than instigating another round of genocide. So this is happening in the name of eliminating TPLF, because the TPLF as a party would be a strong opponent of the political agenda that the prime minister is driving today, which is supported massively by the liberal world.
You talked about the TPLF, and you even made reference to a certain professor who, on public television, requesting that the TPLF, be expunged. I mean, this shows how deep-rooted this issue is. I mean, it goes, for many, it's more personal than even the issue itself. Do you see a situation where maybe a solution, a non-kinetic solution, as a way of resolving this issue permanently, can sort of be employed or used?
After the Pretoria Agreement was signed, there was a glimmer of hope that things would return to some sort of normalcy, even if justice would be a long way to go. What happened, to make the matter complicated, the Ethiopian Electoral Board has had cancelled the registration of the TPLF as a political party. So instead of moving into the political discussions to solve the fundamentals of this problem with the central government, which are inherently political, the TPLF was made into fighting to regain its legitimacy as a political party, as a player. And now only last week, the Ethiopian Federal Parliament has approved a law that may allow the TPLF to re-register as a political party. That will then allow them probably to kickstart or even to boost the political conversations that they are having with the central government. We're hoping that this could be, again, one baby step, but this is far from the pursuit of justice. The absolute solution to this crime lies in how the Ethiopian government is going to respond to this report and address, because everything that has happened.
And do you see, do you see that happening? Do you see the Ethiopian government responding to this report and addressing it?
Yes, the Ethiopian government is the key player, and they have a role to do. And they addressing the issue of justice is one way of moving away from the perpetuation of similar crimes. You don't hold the criminals accountable; you are bound to repeat it. And Tigray is still stuck in this very genocidal triangle where it's geographically today. It is out of the woods yet. We cannot say that this the end of this crime is ahead of us if we're not addressing the root cause of it. And to address the root cause of it, it is important that the political aspect of it at least is addressed. And the central government has a responsibility to fast track that one according to the Pretoria peace agreement. That's the bare minimum.
Professor Gebissa, let me move to you on this one. What do you consider, a lasting solution to this particular issue on ground? Do you feel that, a non-kinetic approach should be adopted? And how do you also, what do you consider justice at the end of the day?
The root cause of the genocide are really complicated and really deeply rooted in Ethiopian history and the history of state formation in Ethiopia itself. One thing that we need to mention about the TPLF is that they removed in 1991 the military dictatorship and introduced a new constitution which devolved power to the regions. The Ethiopian government right now, which the successor to the previous administration, which was TPLF dominated, wants to restructure the state again. Instead of the devolution of power to the regions, it wants to centralize and unitarize the state. And that's the root of the conflict. And on the other side, on the federalized side and the devolution of power, the TPLF is seen as the most important and strongest party. And the assumption on the part of the Ethiopian government is that if you get rid of the TPLF, you can get rid of any other proponent of the federalist or democratic solution. So as long as the Ethiopian government keeps on pushing on this agenda of centralizing power in the hands of the prime minister and probably after a while a new president of Ethiopia, there is no solution. But the solution to this is an all-inclusive, transparent, and credible national dialogue. Not one that the government is spearheading, but one that involves all stakeholders, in which all problems in Ethiopia, political problems, economic and other problems, are put on the table, and Ethiopians and their leaders sit down and hash it out and chart their own future. That's the only solution. What the Ethiopian government right now is doing is, on the one hand, talking to the international community through the language of national reconciliation and national dialogue, but on the other side, prosecuting the war against other areas, not just Tigray, but also in Amhara, in Oromia, and other places conflicts are raging. And the root cause is that the state formation that the Ethiopian government really wants to set the clock back on the progress that had been made on the 50 years. And that's where the resistance is.
All right. I would just like to pick something you talked about as a solution, national dialogue. I mean, we've had, and the parties involved there have been conversations around this over the years. I'm coming to you, Tsedale. I mean, will national dialogue do much?
Under two circumstances, national dialogues could be very successful. Number one is if a country is in pre-war period to avoid the war. The second is if it has transitioned into a post-war period in which all actors that have grievances against the state can participate. Right now, Ethiopia is in the middle of a war. It's not just Tigray, as Professor Ezekiel said. There is an ongoing war in Amhara regional state, and there is a war in the Oromia regional state, and there are other militarized conflicts in many parts of the country. Afar in Somali border areas, there is a conflict that has not been reported so far for lack of better evidence, but it is ongoing. You cannot dialogue when at the same time persecuting a war. And Ethiopia that's what they're doing. They have launched the national dialogue, in which has been shunned by all warring parties that are participating in the conflict in Oromia and in Amhara, but also legitimate political parties. More than a dozen legitimate registered opposition political parties have said they cannot participate because it's not independent and it's very exclusion. They have been excluded from the process so far. So in this circumstance, a national dialogue that has kicked off in Ethiopia is bound to fail. Probably another round, if the government decides that this experiment was dead on arrival, maybe another round. But it has to be, as Professor Ezekiel said, an all-inclusive that includes people that have questions about the status, the state, and the identity of the Ethiopian state at the moment. Unless and otherwise, you cannot succeed in having a national dialogue.
Just before I let you go, I'm still staying with you, Tsedale. I mean, the media has done so much in terms of trying to bring about awareness of this issue over time. What else do you think the media can do to further push this message?
When it comes to this genocidal war on Tigray, and as a person who's involved in media, I think the first thing the media has to do, the mainstream media, particularly the Ethiopian mainstream media, is to come to terms as to how it enabled this genocide to happen. And if you don't come to terms with it, you're bound to be an accessory to a similar kind of genocide again. The media has a role to play. It's not just a social, this genocide was instigated not just on the social media, but on the mainstream, state-owned, independent, privately owned media collectively have failed Tigray in this pursuit of genocidal war against the people. So I think for the media, the first step to do is what have we done during the war and also before the war to instigate the war itself and come to terms with it, reckon with that, and see, can we do something else that could reverse or even prevent what's happening? That is not, unfortunately, that's not what's happening. As I just mentioned earlier, only yesterday, when a prominent media channel had a professor talking about the need to wipe out the TPLF, we're all over it again. This is not the only incident. So I don't really see how the media can be any contributing factor in moving away from where we are today, unless it looks back and evaluates and do a housekeeping work of what we did to enable it in the first place.
All right. Tsedale Lemma, founder of the Addis Standard Tri-lingual Publication, and also Professor Ezekiel Gebissa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on the show today, and this is where, of course, we will be dropping the curtains. But in case you missed out on the program, you can actually catch up on our YouTube page. The handle is at News Central TV. My name is Dakbo Adigboyi. Bye for now.